This is all scraped off, Mike? Let's Windex it down. We're going to make, in the course, in a very short time of one day, we're going to demonstrate how to build a cardinal wing in one day. Complete with, start with a nice, you got the plans first? Let's get the plans. Clean table. No glue, table's already been leveled. Lay them out, baby. What'd you do, put saran wrap on them?
No, I laminated them.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, Mike laminated these plans. Now, normally, if you had a set of these plans, you could do one of two things. You could cut a notch. In this case, you can just fold them back and then retape it. We want to have a place to insert the rod. He's got these laminated, which would be nice. The glue won't drip all over them. And we have three choices of using a rod hole, and then I'll just, from that rod hole height, make a fixture for holding the front of the wing up, because we're going to build this with one rod a la the way the kit normally gets built. Now, nothing is nailed down yet. Mike's got all the ribs. You got them marked, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
One mark.
And you can reference that right off the plan. What you need to do is let's glue one on. The way we did Dave's wing, and it worked the best, let's glue one block in place, slide the ribs on, and then just kind of get them in a rough alignment of where they want to be. Easiest way that I know to get this piece in position is take one rib, give me any one of these. We reference to the back of the table where the rod hole is, and sighting down, just get that roughly in position. Doesn't have to be within 1/1000th of an inch. You just wouldn't want to have it out here. Okay, now Mike can take one by one by one. He can make sure the ribs are in order, and you can slide them out onto the rod one by one by one. And any time I've ever done it, I break at least 10 of them. It's par for the course. If you can get them all on. Another good trick right now is, did you put Simonize on this rod? You can take a rag with some carnauba wax. Just sliding on perfect. This laser cut stuff just slides right on. It's ridiculous. Slide them on, get them in a rough position, and then we're going to glue the other block in. That'll be the next step. Now here's the deal. Normally, what normally happens when you're building up a rod with a wing with two rods, like on the wing construction video, of course you have the two rods and you don't need the piece in the front. But what we need is a piece to block up the leading edge of the ribs. So what I do is go right off the rod itself, make an impression in here. This usually makes it that it's very accurate. Okay, and that then becomes my leading edge piece. So I'm going to put a notch in here, trim this off, and this will be, I can replicate this 4 or 5 or 6 times into making little jigs to hold the front of the wing up. So this will in effect replace the front rod. Now of course you just do this with some scrap wood. Doesn't have to be fancy. All we're looking for is one dimension on this. What you want to do is make about 5, 6, 7. The more of these you make, the better if you really want it to be crazy. Since you can use up scrap wood, it doesn't matter. And make sure they're all block sanded 90 degrees to that side, and I do that out on a belt sander. Make these pieces up, I want to be real certain that I've got a 90-degree angle. Stack them all together, just to dress them off. Top side we're not even going to use, so I just dress them off to make it a little neater. Now I know since this is scrap wood, I know this is going to be my center line. I can cut all of these together and put the notch in for the leading edge all at once. Okay, so now in effect we know this. The rod is that high off the table. We've got a 90-degree line coming back, and we know all of these notches are equal. So now we can use these just as temporary little holes. These are actually taking the place of the front rod. Because of the laser cutting, you can't really leave that hole for the front rod. This is a replacement of the front rod. Mike's doing is we're getting a center line that actually shows, we already got one done, We're coming up off the table 90 degrees, and then 90 degrees off of the edge, right into the front, and making sure that the tip of this center line is exactly the same as from the center of the rod down to the table, so that now we'll have a parallel surface, a flat surface. We'll be able to check the leading edge, be able to check the trailing edge, and be able to reference that we're in the center, the same thickness as the center of the rod. We'll have 3 references going right down the wing all at once. It's easy if you spend 5 minutes now. Put it on both. It only takes a minute. Put them on both sides of the wood too, Mike. Just trying to get a little reference on how long this takes. We roughly started this a little after 9 o'clock. Right, now if you just hold that there 1 second, Mike, I can the ribs just pull right up into position. This one's going up against. I want to get a rough alignment over the plan, just roughly. If you're working by yourself, what's easy to do is just tack glue that down to the table, and then line each rib up. Now, if there's a little slop in the ribs, that's fine. You just don't want a hard one. You know what I'm saying? If it's sloppy, you don't give a damn. But you don't want one that's pressing out. Let me put one of these up here too. This will be a little reference point. Put 1 drop of glue on this just to hold it. Is that kicker? Oh, you got fresh glue. I'm not used to working with fresh glue. It's too easy. Okay, rough, rough, rough. Boom, boom, boom. Rough. Rough, 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 rough. And we got half of the wing laid out roughly. Okay, now we want to tack glue that down. Let's put just 1 drop of thick CA on this. Will it stick to this plastic, you think?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, kick it. Okay, now we want to get one in the middle. We want to trim this off with a Zona saw. That's cool. How many of these we got? We got 6. Okay, that's good. Okay, just put that piece there. That didn't kick off yet. Wait a minute.
Maybe it's not going to stay?
Yeah. Well, if it isn't, we'll drill a hole in the plan so we can go glue to the table. That's old stuff. That's from when John bought it, good 20 years ago. Okay, and get one up there. What we wound up doing, and see, normally if you're using plans, you would just cut the plans. In this case, we're trying to glue to this Teflon or whatever this stuff is, so it's easier. We're just going to sacrifice a set of plans, glue it right to the table, kick it, and then we're going to do the same thing up there. Probably this you don't have to because we're glued to this steel. But all we're doing is using these as little references.
This one went.
Okay. If it glues, fine, but you don't want to. You just don't want to take a chance. If it's not, the hell with the plans. We got 30 sets of plans over there. I already got the plans. Okay. And if it's not in position, break it and just move it. Or you can just break it up, move it. You want to be on that center line. That center line that's on the wood is the key thing. If you don't have it right now, then it's really a problem later on. Everything gets tack glued and all crooked and crazy and everything. So I'll hold this, reference it off the plans. We want to trim the leading edge so we can butt join the 2 pieces with a pretty nice butt joint. Just Zona saw that 1 piece right up. Okay, so now we got the leading edge. We're up referenced off the table in 3 places. I'm just going to repeat the same thing on this side. And it's real easy. This is the kind of thing, if you have a buddy that's going to build a wing, what's a good idea is build both wings in one day or one session. Have 2 guys framing out a wing like this. It's really helpful to have the second guy, and then get off the table and do the other one. Do the 2 of them in one day. When you work by yourself, this can be a little challenging. So the ribs on the other side, you use the aluminum pad, or even if you don't have these things in aluminum, you can make them out of plywood. Just give yourself a scratch here. Use this piece here for the reference, and that's your little guide for cutting that piece. And then you want to get, obviously, some kind of a nice square joint here, right in the middle. Now you got your leading edge done, Mike. And all you got to do is just kind of feather up all the ribs on that, and then we'll put those little blocks in. But see now, while the blocks are holding this, we made up a couple extra blocks. He made one extra one here because this is the first wing. These ribs are all still just floating in midair. And then I can get a reference point everywhere along that wing, no matter where I am, that I'm the same height up off the table. And if the table is straight, the wing should be straight. It should be pretty cut and dry. And just pull each rib up one by one. They go right up in position. Thanks to the laser cutting, everything fits like a glove. When you cut these ribs out by hand, Mike, they don't fit like this, believe me.
Yeah.
Even when Joe, well, I shouldn't say, when Joe Adamusco cuts them, they fit. When I cut them, they don't fit.
Yeah.
Joe's the only one I know that can cut them, that they just, everything just snaps right in position. Okay, now my personal way of doing this is I drill where the leading edge joins, drill a 1/16 hole, put in a hardwood toothpick, just like so. Measure the toothpick to the table, make sure that this dimension here is the same as here, because now, even after the wing is in silver, you can just sand through that. It'll be inside the body, and that gives you a reference. Then you can connect that dot with the center out here, and that'll give you the center line on the ring for lining up the ring and the body. So this is just a convenience thing for letting you get the ring center line on the front. And this, by the way, Joe Adamusco uses this, I think Mike uses this, Mike Rogers, is an excellent way of doing it. Okay, you can just check this, Mike. Check that we have, what is it, we're referencing off 2 3/4?
Yeah.
Check that we probably are, it looks pretty good from here. Then tack glue it in and trim off the front. And all you care about is where the center of the toothpick runs through the leading edge. And if it's a little low, open up the hole and move it up. If it's not, push it down or just leave it right where it is. Is it close?
Gotta go up a little bit.
Up, okay. Open up the hole, just run the drill through it a few times. Pull the toothpick out, or you can even use the next bigger size. Because it just needs to float in there. It's not a structural thing. Okay. Again, a couple of times I've built the whole wing, and I went to put the wing in the body and didn't have a real accurate center line. I said, oh boy, why didn't I do that? Because now you can see where that toothpick would be relative to all your center lines on the wing. That's really a good trick, a good way to do it. And just check that you're that height off the table and tack glue it in and trim it. What happens is once this is all trimmed off, even after the wing is in silver, you just hit this with a little piece of sandpaper and that toothpick shows right through. Let it kick and then trim it off with a Zona saw. Okay, and we're ready to do the spars. Now with that little hardwood piece in there, just a nail file is good. One of those Bud McKnight sanding sticks. Cool. And soon as, when you sand through the sheeting, believe me, you'll see that little toothpick guy sticking out. It doesn't go away. Just dress that off and then we'll lay out. We got the spars here. And what's a good idea is to sight down the spars, even though this one doesn't look so hot. We'll put him away. This one looks okay. Just make sure you're not putting a spar in it. Looks like so. And we went through quite a few of these spars to get some half straight ones. Now what Mike's doing before he lays out the bottom spar first is you can get the angle right off of the plans. Zona saw it right off the plans. Here, let me hold this on one side.
Okay,
You can even mark it with a pencil if you want.
Mark.
Make a mark, then take it out from there because you're working like in a bird cage in there. And then we want to do the other side, make the one off the other side. Just pull it out and do it out off the table. So that in effect, the next thing we're going to do is snap in the bottom spar and just put a couple of tacks of glue. Not going to glue all the ribs to it, just a couple of tacks. We want to run some straight edges on this before we go and put any real amount of glue on it. As of now, everything is still free floating, free, right where it should be. Okay, now you can just use one spar to mark the other one. And you can actually lay them out right underneath. Make sure you have a half-assed decent butt joint there. Now you can take them off the table and make the cut. Okay?
Perfect.
All right, now you can just do the same thing with the top. In fact, you can just duplicate the spore. Use those
Right.
to make up another pattern. This is what's beautiful about having laser cut parts, is the parts just snap in, there's no glue holding them, and you really just need to pull it up one rib at a time. But now we want to look down each rib before we do anything else and line up each rib with the plans, and you can see it's such a nice press fit on there. The laser does such a nice job of cutting. You can line up each rib before we even put the top spar in. And just go right down a plan, line each, whoop, there's one. It pulls it just tight enough without holding it. With the same thing, like I said, when I cut the ribs, it's a press fit, it's a tight fit, it's a loose fit. Fits like a shoe, fits like a glove or whatever. Okay, Mike's got the other one. Just work your way from one end to the other, one rib at a time, just like when you put hinges in. Just pull the spar right up into one rib at a time. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to lay out the trailing edge sheeting here. We have no glue whatsoever on the wing yet. And what Mike is doing, we got the two pieces of wood out of the kit that are sea grain. The edge that goes toward the cap strips does not have to be a perfectly straight edge, but the edge that goes on the trailing edge, we'd like it to be as straight as possible. You want me to hold it? Let me hold one edge. This is what's nice about having a slave like me around. Line it up and then I'll use my finger here. Okay. Obviously try to hold the blade 90 degrees. We're using a brand new blade. All of the wood is 4 to 6 pound wood, contest grade SIG wood. Now that edge that you're cutting is going to be the straight edge that you want to go against the trailing edge. The other edge goes against the cap strips. Now when you do it this way, you're actually going to get 3 pieces out of one of the pieces of sheeting. So if you have one piece that's really sea grain, really highly sea grain I should say, try to get all 3 of them out of that. And then from the other piece, cut one and you have some extra wood to sheet the middle of the wing or do your wing tips or whatever you're going to use it for. Okay, put it right over there. And you get 3 out of one piece of wood. You'll actually wind up with 2 extra pieces. This little piece in case you need some extra cap strips, but it's a nice piece of sea grain. Now only cut one out of the other piece of wood. You got the other piece of sea grain? And then we'll get that up on the plane where it belongs. Now while Mike's doing that, I want to take a piece of scrap wood. In fact, we can use this piece is even better. Press it up into the rod. That's going to give me my reference point. Okay, what that does now is it's going to be a block that I put up in the middle of the wing. So I want to make, and it's shown on the plans, I'm going to make a little piece that comes up like so that it supports the rod in the middle, and I also want to do the same thing for the front. Oh, we don't really have to using this method. You got 2 of them up there, but you do need one on the rod. If you were using the double rod method, you could use, that would be the shape of your template. But in our case, that's all it needs to be, just about like so. And that's not even glued in. All that's doing is supporting the weight of the rod. If you use tubing, and Joe did have tubing at one time, I don't have any, this is a solid steel rod. Obviously with the tubing you don't need that piece, it's not extra weight. And always when you put that in, take a little look. There's 2 ways of doing this. You can look by eye, and you can see by eye. Let's see if you can see this. By eye, I don't think you're going to get any straighter than that. Everything here, the rod method, the ribs are cut accurately. Up to this point, you should be, even if you're working alone, you should be not even an hour into the job, maybe a little more than, what are we at? An hour and 10-15 minutes here. But we're this should be all framed up in a very short amount of time. Okay, let's get the trailing edge pieces. Now, we had to cut a little bit more of this off to get this little rod thing in position, but that's okay. It's really just to support that this doesn't bow down. Mike measured off the middle of the plans, put a center line, and then put a 45-degree angle. We don't want to have a butt joint at 90. I'd like to have a joint at 45. Makes it a little bit stronger, especially being our horn is going to attach in there. It gives us some meat that the horn is hooked on something solid. You really, on this kind of thing, Mike, you don't even have to use a 45-degree triangle, but it's nice if you do. You just make it a little workmanlike. Okay, great. And you could save this for your pattern for the other side. Okay. Now take a couple of pins. Let's get a couple of pins just for now. We'll somehow hold that up and then lay out the other piece.
Right.
See, what's happening is our aluminum pieces are holding us in 90 degrees at the end, so that everything now we can work with at the middle of those aluminum pieces, and we know all our joints in the middle will be nice and straight. Okay, what we're doing is just pinning that even with the trailing edge. Now what we're doing is we're making one modification. Now I've built so many of these wings I'm getting sick of looking at them, but we're making one modification here that normally would not be on the stock wing. Is I'm making the sheeting a 1/4 inch wider this way, basically just to stiffen up the trailing edge. This is really Mike's first built up wing. I think it'll be a little insurance when he does the sanding, and now see, when that piece is in place, this piece is now the pattern. Little butt joint, just held it in position here on an angle. Let's see, the little thing is pinned in. Now I want to check, Mike, that we got it straight down the trailing edge. You want to eyeball it from up at that end?
Yeah.
Eyeball it that we're down this trailing edge, okay. If it looks good, start at one end. Make sure each rib is in position. Pinch it with your finger and put one drop of CA on. Now see, this one isn't lined up. We got to go over it.
We got to line them up.
Only the trailing edge. Let's line them up right. Now, if you really want to be a fanatic, and I don't think it's necessary, you can make a 90-degree, a little triangle so that the ribs aren't laying over.
Yeah, let's do that.
You could do that. I don't have a triangle. You got to make one out of plywood or balsa or something.
No, I don't have one either at home.
Now, Mike, being a professional contractor by trade, came up with this great little invention, which is probably a good way to do it. Actually, what you can do, Mike, is put a pin in the rib.
Right.
Right where your finger is, if you want to. And again, just pin it here so it's 90, then line up the trailing edge and tack glue it. And then work your way right down all the ribs. One pin will hold that right in place. I think that works great. Now, he's trying to side it. Let me see if I can do this with the camera. Right down the rib so that you're right even with the plans. You ever notice how some people draw plans and sell them only show you one wing? So you can't do this. You got to buy 2 sets of plans. Okay, one pin in there I think will be fine. Now once that's lined up, and all you need to do is put the trailing edge in position and put just one drop right in the back. Don't really make a solid joint. Just tack everything tacked and get it all straight before we go anywhere. Look at that beautiful little IKEA box.
Isn't that nice?
Cute little baby. Okay, so that'll hold it at 90. Now you can just wiggle the trailing edge in, get it in position. Try to get one drop right on the back. Another tip, try to keep the glue away from the rods, as you'll see later. When you want to get the rod out of there before you get too cute. If you wind up gluing a rod in position, it could be a real pain in the nookies. But what you can do first of all is glue the end rib on. That one's 90 because it's rubbing up on the aluminum pad. Just put one drop of glue in there. Get that one glued in. That'll line up, you work your way right down then. Mike's cheating, he's using fresh glue. Real men use up the old glue from 10 years ago and then use gallons of kicker. Okay, there you go. By the way, if you wanted to make, and I didn't think of doing this, one of the ways we could have made this easier is take this whole trailing edge, sand it with some 320, and leave the dust on, and then the dust would be kicking this off just at the right speed. That would be a real nice way to do it. You can just work your way right down the wing, one rib at a time. Let one kick off. You could pinch it with your finger too. It'll get the trailing edge nice and straight, and just make sure none gets on the old rod. What you do every once in a while is just twist the rod, spin it. See, yeah, nothing's happening. Okay. Otherwise, later on, you can't find out which rib had the glue on it. Once you put the top piece on, it's hard to figure out where the glue went. And just move the triangle down, go. And it goes pretty quick. All you need that triangle for is just to hold the trailing edge. Because the leading edge is still loose. We can still move the leading edge front to back. But once this is locked in, now we can use the triangle up in the front, get each rib in position, one by one, tack them to the spar and the leading edge, and we'll have the whole thing tacked in position in one stroke of the pen. It'll be real nice. And once you get the little feel, you know, that little feeling of how long each one, you go right down and thump, 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 thump.
Give a little chop on that.
Oh, you got that little,
Gumbolini's on there.
Yeah, boogers. Okay, give it a shot.
No.
Now, an easy way to do the top piece, Mike's already done it. Lay out the top piece, just make a replication of the bottom piece when you cut it. Put the joint in ahead of time. And what Mike's doing is just working your way down, one rib at a time, line it up with the back, put a couple tacks of glue on it. Try not to tack the, if you can. If you get one dot in the front, Mike, and then go to the back and kind of get it from the back, all you need to do is tack it at this point. You don't need to make a solid joint. Another way to do this that I've done in the past is use alphatic resin and just put masking tape around it if you really wanted to. Joe Adamusco likes to use ambroid. But the idea is to get that trailing edge on relatively straight. Yeah, it's alright, that's fine. And just work your way down one rib at a time. Okay, you got a glue on there already, Mike? Just get them glued, hold them together. Now everything in the front of this is still loose. There's no glue on anything. Okay. Okay, the only thing you want to do now do the same thing to the front of the ribs. Get one drop, use the 90-degree triangle, line up each rib with the plan. Use one drop, just a drop in each corner. You don't want, the idea is to have everything tacked in. And then just work your way right down. And even if you tack it, Mike, and it doesn't come out perfect, you put the triangle back on, just break it and put it. That's the whole idea of tacking everything and not having it solid glued.
It's a great thing.
A shot? Somebody's following that.
Oh, I don't know. That's Seafire stuff.
Oh.
Okay, Mike, you got everything tacked?
Everything's tacked.
Trailing edges tacked on now, just tacked in and roughed into position. Mike's tacking in everything with one drop of CA up on the spars. 5 minutes, we'll be ready to start popping the sheeting on, baby. Looking good. Okay, everything looks good. Okay, Mike's got the center joint. This is actually going to become the belt crank support. Got it in with thick CA and then just soak it with thin CA. Let it, Q-tips, kick it off. Dress it off a little bit so it's nice and even with the top. Then we're going to do the bottom the same way. I like to have the top one in before I do the bottom. Otherwise, you're trying to work underneath and it gets to be a nuisance. Easier to, at least for me, easier to do the top one first. Okay, once you get that tacked in, he's got it tacked in with thick. Soak the whole joint. Let the Q-tip dust kick it off. And that kind of locks us in now. Now, everything is tacked. Just one drop of glue on each spot. Trailing edges holding that relatively stiff. The next thing we have to do is one by one take each one of these blocks off the table and relieve it about 1/16 of an inch on one side. And that allows us to get the sheeting in there. I'm going to break one apart. I'll wait till Mike's done here. Take each one off. It'll pop right off the table. Take a little knife blade and just take 1/16 off, and then we can glue the leading edge sheeting down on this. Now again, this is unique because we don't have the front rod. We'll take each one of these and just remove this little bit of material. You can do it on a jigsaw or on a knife, but it'll still let the leading edge rest here, and we'll still be able to get the sheeting in and get it glued to the leading edge. All right, you just do one at a time, Mike. Just do one panel at a time, in fact. Do this panel and we'll get the sheeting on.
Okay.
And then we'll do this panel. You just get, where are you, 1, 2, 3, 4 on one side. You want to use the center line, but you want to be able to tuck the sheeting in there.
That's cool.
The easiest way is if you do one at a time and re-glue it back down in position, because then we want to check we haven't moved that center line. What we're doing now is that the sheeting is just laid in those little notches. He's running a trailing edge, a T-square off the trailing edge, and that gives you this cut. Now you can't really cut this cut flat on a table. You have to cut it while you have the bend in the material, or when you put the other piece up to butt it, the joint is going to look like a banana. You can even just scribe it that way, Mike, and then lay it on a table and cut it, or because we don't have a really new blade. I should have told you to bring some 26 blades. You also can do this cut too. At this edge, you can use the triangle, or you can just reference off the aluminum and just put that cut in there too. Then you'll have one piece of the sheeting that'll just be a drop in, and then we'll trim it with the spar when you're all done. See how nice those little blocks hold the sheeting down while you're doing all your trimming and stuff? Okay, once you have this scribed on, you just go right in with that. Okay, we're doing a little dry fit. These little clips hold it in position. And you can mark this. Leave yourself about 3/32 of an inch extra, and then just go to that corner with the straight edge. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The easiest way, take this. I got the pen here. Make sure that's flat. I'll hold this flat up here. Or even if it's sticking out at 64th, it's okay, but not on the minus side. It won't matter, because when you butt the other piece, we'll just butt it up against it, and then you can trim it to fit. Right now, you don't have to get too crazy about that joint.
Well, it's pretty good the way it is.
Okay, but out here, what you need to do, Mike, is here, where the spar ends, leave 3/32. Come back. Okay? And now take that and connect it to that corner with the ruler.
Right.
Lay it flat on the table and connect it to that corner. We'll take the piece out now. So nice having those little fixtures. And now connect that joint to that. That'll give you a nice straight edge to work off. Okay, what we're doing is a dry fit. I'll hold this end. Make sure you got it up there. Okay, and you're even with the spar. Okay, now the trick here is we want to glue that front on. You're good, Mike. Don't make yourself crazy. You want to get this alignment. Get a couple of pins in the front so this doesn't slide up or down. Maybe one pin every 3 ribs. You see what I'm doing? I'm putting my finger here, so this is flat with the leading edge. Otherwise, you're coming down off it or going back. And then you can glue it, tack glue it from the back. You see what I'm doing? I'm putting my finger here to make sure that's flat all the way. You don't want to have it laying way over, or else when you go to join the other piece of sheeting, it's in the way. Just one pin every 3 is fine. It goes without saying, when you're doing this, you want to try not to press down on the wing. You're not using the wing for a surfboard or something. Try to work with as little pressure as practical. Okay, now what Mike's doing is before, and this is a good tip, before you go on to putting the other piece of sheeting on, because this is easier to do right now, he's making up the little splice for the leading edge sheets. Grain going side to side, of course. And what we'll do, we'll put that behind here, and then the other piece of sheeting can lay in. Rather than just butt joining them together, it'll be like a furniture joint then, be a very strong joint. Now push it right up onto the leading edge. Yeah, you got it. Okay. Okay. You can even use, if you want on there, use some of the slow.
Yeah.
And this will give you a little working time if that the stuff won't kick off on your hand or something. Yeah, just put the glue on half. I think that's an easier way to do it. Gives you a real nice thing to put your joint up against, just like a furniture joint. Just repeat the same steps on the other side. You can use those points to line that up, but here's the trick, is always get this joint perfect. Right. And then go trim the end, because if the end isn't right, who cares? You can always fill that in, but you want that joint here to be nice. And usually it'll take a little fiddling to get it right. Now what we did is we put some thick CA on the spar joint and then just rolled this back and held it. And it's not totally glued, it's really just, mostly just tacked in spots. Okay, now one other thought. I've seen other people ask me this question, we may as well put it on the tape. You really never want to have the grain go with the spar. A lot of people glue that to the spar and then wrap the leading edge, because then you don't have the grain. You like to have the grain, the straightest part of the grain, going with the leading edge, because that conforms more to the airfoil. I think there's less chance it's going to warp when you do it that way. And again, when you trim this up, trim for this cut first. Now the same thing with the triangle and everything. Just put that cut in and ignore this side. And then if you have to do it 15 times, it doesn't matter. When it fits real nice, walk over here and just lop that off even with the aluminum. That's the easiest way to do this. We already off camera took the notches out of here. I might use the triangle again to get that cut, which should be a pretty decent fit. But now you want to do sheetrock work. Just take off the high spot, Hold that for him, Bobby. Just hold that, where it should be. And just mark it, or just block sand it out. Where the hell's the sanding block?
I think maybe sandpaper would do that.
Sandpaper.
Okay, Bobby, let that go? Huh?
Yeah, just take a little kerf at a time. Those Bud McKnight sanding blocks are so good. Formerly known as nail files. By the way, that is a great thing to have in your shop. Bud McKnight and Bob Sabatino both donated these to our club. Our club. What do we call this? A club or what? Club soda. Syndicate. Isn't this how the mafia started?
Yeah, you betcha.
You betcha. Okay, that's a nice joint. Now that you have that, you can hold that in position and mark the trailing edge. Mark where that spar is coming by and just add a little, hold it, Bobby. We'll mark this with a pen right where my fingernail is. That'll be your cut, and we'll connect that, and he'll have his next piece of sheeting, and we'll just replicate what we did on the other side. We'll have the whole leading edge sheeted up here in 10 minutes.
Now you know just what I mean.
If you do one bay at a time, that seems to be the easiest way. Then degrease your finger. A lot of times it's easier, and this stuff is just kick it ahead of time. By the time you get down there, it'll give you a little time to work.
Yeah. Snap, everybody snap your fingers with me.
And then as he works down, Bob, you just work down one step at a time. idea when you want to get the next piece of the sheeting on. And I think this is where Mike went wrong with his first wing, is you want to roll this back and press it down, but you don't want to put any pressure on it. You don't want to have, you know, an elephant sit on it. Just enough pressure, or just squeeze it and try to just roll it back, just as if you had a rolling pin roll it back. And it is really handy when you're doing this to have a, you know, a couple of guys that can help you. Knowledgeable professional modelers. Professionals of the sheetrock industry here. That's what's nice about being in construction all winter. You get to play with these toys, huh? And then make 80 grand in 1 week in the summer. Yeah, put the sanding dust, hit it with the sanding block, fill it whatever groove is left, and just leave the dust right in the crack, and then run a nice bead of thin CA right down the crack. And that'll go in, and believe me, when you pinch this from underneath, yeah, that's a nice tight fit. Okay, let it rip, baby. Oh, that glue. Whoever invented those tips, jeez. And then just walk the Q-tip down there, sand it a couple of times, even repeat it 2 or 3 times. Now that should lock it in. That should lock it in that we're on center on all of these posts, and that's the next thing we're going to check, and then we're going to cap strip the whole top. The cap strips help lock it in a little bit too. And just hit it with the sanding block when it's dry, Mike. And that cleans up the whole leading edge. What Mike's doing, you put the cap strips, cut each one, a couple of thousandths too big, and see they're in, let me just show this. That's a little too big, Mike. You want to make it a little bit, oh man, a couple of thousandths smaller. Just a little smaller than that, because these are going to lock it in. Just enough that it'll stay there by itself, you know, it won't move by itself. If it just bows up just a little bit, you know you got it. In fact, if it doesn't fall off and go into the black hole in space, it's perfect. But the idea is that you don't want to leave a gap up here. If you have a gap, you know what happens? It fills up with CA, and when you go to sand it, guess what happens? You got a hard, and it always winds up being a bubble instead of being that perfectly flat surface. You may as well cut them all for one wing and then go right down the line and glue them all at once. Now the trick is you want to put thick CA on the rib only, nothing on either edge. Put them in so they just snap in and then press it down. Then when it's all done, just 1 drop of thin CA at each end. Otherwise, if you get that big glob of glue here and here, when you go to block sand it in, it always has a little warp to it.
But his only friend, he didn't borrow or lend. They built a little hut, lived there till Friday, but Saturday night it was shut. Where did Robinson Crusoe go with Friday on Saturday?
That looks a little big.
Every Saturday
You can always just hit it with a piece of sandpaper. Just hit it with one of those Bud McKnight sanding blocks.
they went hunting for rabbits. When the
Or should we call them Bob Sabatino sanding blocks? I don't know. Who invented that? And if it's too small, just use it on the other wing. Because it'll always go this way. See, I always work from the big side to the small side. Then if you cut it too small, use them over. Basically, because I'm cheap. When you grow up poor, you learn how not to throw the crust of the bread away, believe me. Okay, that's coming out good, Mike. Go right down. Mike's doing before these are even glued in is center them. You can feel when they're centered. So they're an I-beam, not a T-beam. Put 2 little dots. Put them on both ends if you want. And this way you know exactly where it'll be. That just gives you a little reference to work with. Now when you go to line these up, of course, you have a little bit of a reference. If you see it's over like that, you can just move it back into position. All you have to do now is put the glue on and press it down. And this is just about the right amount.
first to fight on all the damn don't you won't tell that to the Marine. The hope that burns in his heart, but I'm here.
And just make a little springboard out of it. You just get enough tension just on it that just that it's under positive tension, and you got it. And then you get those real neat joints up on the corner. Now, the whole object of this is to get as much of the wing built before you move it, before you pull the rod or flip it over, or really touch it. If you could, if gravity wasn't a thing and you could climb under the table now and do the bottom, it'd be real nice, but it's not the reality. Actually, we probably could figure out a way of jigging it up that the thing was 3 feet off the table and you could do the bottom without moving it. Or build it in outer space. That'd be a good reason. Reason enough to charter a space shuttle.
There you go.
Just build it in outer space. Okay, that looks good, Mike. Just go right down the line. Boom, 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 boom.
I've been away from you a long time. I never thought I'd miss you so. Somehow I feel your love was real. Near you, I long to be. The birds are singing, it is song time. The band is drumming soft and low.
And the last thing, when everything is done, and everything is straight, then we can rotate the wing in any direction you want and run glue all over the place and make glue joints on everything. But right now, it's still flexible enough that we can, if it starts warping up or down, we can kind of lock it back in position. Okay, we want to make the center piece of sheeting here. Now what Mike's doing, let's put this up on the camera, Mike.
Okay.
Is connect the corner dots and put a dot on the wood of both of the R6s. Here we are, right here. Measure the distance in the middle, and now subtract that same distance off of both sides, and that gives you the first edge. That gives you the angle, so you have a perfect, you should be a perfect angle right up, that the sheeting goes right up into where you have it. Okay, once you got that set, pretty decent joint.
We'll get better.
Okay. Okay, and once you know that, then you want to take, how far down does the sheeting go into that rib? And give yourself a line on the wood here, and then how far up does it go? And then connect the dot out there and put a little radius in it.
Clean this off here.
I come out to where the sheeting ends. The sheeting ends at R3, am I right?
Right.
Okay, take the triangle, put it up onto the T-square, and give yourself a line halfway up into the wood. I'll hold this. You know, just a scribe line. Go over the rib maybe 1/8 of an inch. Give yourself 1/8 of an inch extra. Whoop, there, just push that piece back up. Now, there's too much pressure on it. It's too many,
Oh, I didn't.
too much pressure. Don't push down.
I didn't. Okay. How high we want to go?
Any amount, just a line. Or halfway. Okay, same thing over here. Give yourself a 90-degree line. Now pick a spot right on the center of the wing, and it doesn't matter. This is fine. Put a dot right there. This is not critical. Put a dot right there. Now connect that dot to the two corners, and that'll give you those little kerfs in the wood.
I've had a love of my own.
And all you're going to use that for is from the angle. No, from the angle out. You only want it from here out. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh.
You only want to get that little kerf coming in. Yeah, you could transpose it out that way if you want.
This way.
Yeah, that's all it's doing is giving you that angle
Oh,
so
I
that they're both the same. It's just allowing you to get that angle with a reference point that they're both equal. Or you could cut up the plans and trace it off the plans if you wanted to. And all that's going to do is give you that both sides are radius the same.
The smaller one,
Yeah, whatever, so it doesn't matter. The size is not critical. If you don't use a radius, you get a stress riser there, and you usually get a wrinkle in the tissue. So a nice little radius is good. Just get that right in there. And you can transpose that same diameter out on the other side. Cut it, and that piece should be ready to put in. Okay, now what Mike has, the joint is done, and we did not glue anything to the ribs yet. We're just tack gluing it down here so we can get the other piece of sheeting in. The reason is when I flip this over, if it starts to bow one way or the other, I want to be able to bend it in the opposite position and then run some glue on it and let that reset it. In other words, right now it's just almost like a free-floating piece of sheeting until we flip it over. Same thing with all of these joints. Nothing is locked in. These whole things, if we wanted to, when we flip it over, we could just favor it left, favor it right, and then glue it. We can put that final little fine-tuning in when we flip it over. Okay, first thing in this piece of sheeting is just connect the dots. Leave it on the positive side by about the thickness of a pen line, and then we'll cut that piece. Then we'll continue this line down and put that radius in, this line down, put the radius in, and we'd like to have it so it's like a cap strip, so it fits in and you just push it down and attach it.
Yes, Daddy, it's sure good to see you again. With a girl like kisses. For a long, long time, and I
Want to do, make sure we have enough room for the radius. You got enough?
Yeah.
Probably you got enough.
I'm going to move it a little bit over this way.
Take the 90-degree triangle, yeah, move it over, transpose that line and just leave yourself the same. Pretty much, we put that radius in with a Dremel tool, so they'll all be the same radius when we're done, but it's not a super critical thing.
We're handling the rent. I don't know you, but when he needs to
And just estimate that radius, we'll put it in with the Dremel drum, then you know they'll be fine.
after they see Harry.
Okay, all you got to do is just run the joints, and don't even worry about attaching anything to the ribs. Now, a good way to do this, Mike, you got a real nice joint there to begin with, is take a sanding block and do this. All the little grooves will fill up with sawdust, and then you'll have, when you run that thin CA, you'll just go just the slightest little bit. It'll fill up the grooves with sawdust, and then you'll get those real nice fits. That's just perfect. Put 4 more. You got some caps. The thing is still set for stripping cap strips. 4 more cap strips. That should just get us this whole side, and sucker will be ready to flip over. All right, cap strip king, go to it, man. Cap strip, huh, Mike? One more, and we're ready to do the Australian flip. And we want to try to save them. Just tap them. Just tap them. One tap, they usually. We want to scrape the table. Like I said, 2,000. That one's broken. We don't need all of them. Okay, you got yours out, Mike?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's see. Just. Even if you have to make new ones, doesn't matter. It's scrap wood. Okay, get them out of there. Let's see, we're not glued. Is the wing glued here? No. Slide the wing to you. Your aluminum is off.
You want it off?
Take it off. Just slide the wing and everything. Wing, you can take the aluminum right off if you want. Take the wing right out with the rod in place and everything.
Oh, wait, we got that.
Whoops! Midgley! Okay, see? Let's put this aside,
Okay.
and then let's scrape the table. Leave the rod in, scrape all this shit off.
Broke a rib.
You broke a rib! Oh, get your money back right now. Scrape it right over here and we'll vacuum it right up. Mike, I'll put these plans, where's your bag of stuff? Get a rubber band on them.
Okay.
Okay, clean the table. Just tack those in, tack the aluminum plates, and then we'll measure the front of the wing and block it up. Okay, now what we did, we just final adjusted each one of these, I broke this off, and all I'm looking for is that the line goes right into the middle of the wing. The line goes into the middle of the wing. It's just shimmed that way. Mike's shaving up the trailing edge, and we put some blocks. Let me show this. Let me get around here, Bob. Just put some blocks in to hold it up because I want to get kind of a center line on that trailing edge. These are loose, just to support it in the middle a little bit. To get that all sanded down. Just watch you don't get too much of a gouge in there. You know, if the only thing you want to avoid now is that you didn't put a big gouge, then you gotta, you know, fill it with DAP or some other nonsense. And then we'll level it up. We get a machinist ruler and go all the way around the back, all the way around the front. And while the wing is open like this, we can get in there and glue every one of these joints, lock it all in place, and then just put the sheeting back. Okay, now that's a machinist ruler, so it's perfectly straight. He's running it off on a trailing edge. Okay, the other thing you want to check, Mike, because we don't, that shim is a floating shim. Just sight down a trailing edge and see. Let's see how straight it is. Well, it's hard to see with this. Actually, what we ought to do with one of these pieces of aluminum is machine out a piece so you can sight the trailing edge. But it looks real good. Now you want to measure it with that little machinist ruler. Just go down with the machinist ruler. You got an arrow on that? And go right around the back. You know, measure it like at every third of the wing, fourth of the wing, whatever. And see if it's wandering up. If it's wandering down, we'll put another shim in the middle. If it's wandering up, because you want this to be locked in position before we go and glue all those ribs in.
Perfect.
Perfect? Okay. Now check the leading edge. Double check the leading edge, make sure that's perfect. Yeah, if you have it upside down. All you need, if you don't even need a ruler, you just need a piece of wood.
Who's gonna take you to Woolwich for those diamond with you when I'm far away?
Looks perfect? Okay, lock in all the ribs. Next step, get the tube of glue, start at one end, and lock it all in place. It's good. Lock it in, we'll put the sheeting, put the belt crank in, and sheet the middle. Hey, you're in Fat City, baby.
$5 bill, and as he was about to give me my dollar change, I said, keep it where
No, I wouldn't do that with me. Just go right around the whole thing there, Miko. Right up on the spore, everything. See what that does? That really locks it in. Now that you have it, if you do that before you flip it over, you just build it in whatever little amount it needs to be tweaked. Now you don't have to untweak it going the other way. And just go right down, boom, 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 done. Okay, what we did, glue up the gear blocks that come in the kit, drill a hole through, and also what we're going to do is we're going to do the upgrade, and the upgrade is that after the gear block is in and the wire is down here, we're going to make up a little block of hardwood, a little piece of scrap motor mount with a little notch in it, so that when that wire slides down, this really is important, it's not only confined in this block up here, it's confined at the bottom too. Now what Mike's doing is trimming this out just to get a real good fit on here. The wing is all locked in, all the glue joints are locked in there, so and it looks like it's going to be straight as an arrow.
We don't need no glue on this.
Nope. Now remember what you want to have happen. You want, the way this is designed so this slides down and the sheeting is just going to butt up on this, and then you take and sand this even, and then you make two little clips to hold your gear in. Otherwise you got to sink this way down into the wood. You got two choices here. You can do that. You can sink it down into the wood further, then you have to make those little hatch covers like are on a Spitfire and everything. So you can make that choice now, you can make it later, but right now, if you want to have the gear that they have those little blocks on, you got to sink this further down. It's just as reasonable to me as get this so it's level with the sheeting, and blend this in and use those little clips. That's all. You're going to make this plane so you can put the gear in a body anyway to fly up the club field.
Right.
So you'll have both of the choices by doing it that way.
Okay.
Just get a reasonably nice tight fit on that. Lunchtime, lunchtime. Anybody can't build a wing by lunchtime, you're eating lunch too early.
Oh, yeah, it's only, what is it?
Oh, man, this would be a good idea. We don't feed anybody until the wing's ready to sheet the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, you got the blocks almost in. You got to get them to sink down so the sheeting just go, and then get that angle filed in there. We'll be all set. All right, let's eat. That was a good pizza. Anyway, Mike likes getting these blocks sanded down. I took a piece of modem out, made these pieces up. All you need to do is run a Dremel tool, make an 1/8" notch. Now I'm going to cut them off, and these will be the bottom supports. You can cut that on a Dremel tool. Just cut it, on the saw. Cut it there.
Cut it right here.
Yeah, so there's two little blocks with a notch in them. That's all you need. Now, see, the idea is to get these so that they're nice and smooth. This way, I guess Mike's working on one. You could run it on a belt sander. But if you wind up taking too much groove out, which sometimes happens, and you have less than half, obviously take the Dremel tool and just walk it down. Because you get your blocks to fit a real nice, fine, tight fit. What you need to do is, where's that little piece? We just made these little pieces up. And it's that piece on the bottom of the rib that's gonna hold that wire in. That's the whole key to having gear that don't jump out of the wing, is that little piece of wood. Okay, now this wire, just take this wire, put your finger on there. Now you can put 1 drop of glue on there. Make sure it doesn't move up and down, you know what I'm saying? And then get the wire out when you put the glue on. Don't leave the wire in there, you glue the wire in place.
The thin stuff?
Yeah. And just put 1 drop just to hold it in position. Let it back up right onto the spar on that bottom spar. And when you have these in, these want to be just below by a 1/64 of an inch. So you can press down the sheeting and get a good glue joint. You know, you just take just a scrap piece of wire, that gives you the alignment. And you got bulletproof gear that aren't going to break out. Okay, do the same thing over on the other side. Fat City, baby. Gear blocks filed just enough. So instead of being up here, they're just a little bit down so the wood will get pressed down and we'll get that whole area smashed down. Get a real good fit onto the balsa wood here. Insurance is where the little block is to take this bay of wood and this bay of wood, which I've already done. Take some thin CA. Just let it kick, kind of normally. That's the fax coming in. Don't even answer the phone. That's a fax. Best if you soak everything with thin. Soak that sheeting on the bottom. Get plenty of glue in there. Kick it with Q-tips. Just a nice strong way of putting the gear in. Haven't seen a lot of these fail. Can't say that about everybody's design. We'll mention anybody that had the gear come out many, many times. Yeah, that's it. See, and the glue hardens up the sheeting on the inside too. Makes it a little solider. I never had that sheeting wet. You'd be surprised how much that hardens up the wood. Right. Hey, we're ready to start cutting out the top sheets.
Down, so
Yeah, hold it. Make sure it's even with the edge.
you can't. You're gonna have to either cut the sheet.
Give it a cut there, then. You can lop that off.
Rack it up.
Okay, I'll whack it.
You can lop it off.
I'll whack it off. Don't.
Just lop that so you can get it to curve down.
Hold it, Bobby. Okay?
Don't worry, he's got 9 more fingers if you cut one off.
Yeah, that's the big thing. That's always mark.
Okay. That was good, kid.
Okay. This gives you a nice Give you a nice chance at getting a decent joint on about the third shot. Yeah, hold this for you.
Watch, let me see. Oh. It's okay. We'll clean that up.
Just make sure you got enough hanging out over the leading edge. You don't cut it too short. When you put that dot out on the other edge for the spar, make sure it's not too short. That's the only thing you can do wrong, then you got to cut another piece. It can be a pain in the neck is because you really can't get your hand underneath to squeeze it. You got to do it from the top. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You want to make your cut here. Make your cut from the spar over, so you don't have to do it when it's in the plane. It's easier to do it when it's on a flat.
Okay.
Give yourself about 3/16 extra, 1/8 of an inch, and trace it right out to the middle. It's just a little easier to do it that way. Save a little bit of time.
Okay.
It should be kicked by now, Mike.
For some reason, it seems like it is. Oh yeah.
Now all you got to do is, let's make up the other sheet for the outside wing. Dress that off by the gear block. Guys are no fun to work with, I'll tell you that. This is worse than working in the A&P. Really, that little piece, we're not using that. You get the other sheet on, we can get the cap strips on. You don't even need that now. You just need the thing underneath to hold it up. It's not going to move up at all from this point on.
You're going to cut that off? I'm going to cut that off. Watch yourself, Sonny.
Ah, President Nixon's back. Well, aren't we lucky? That drying up good?
Loves you, pan.
Put a little kicker, and then get doing those cap strips. Time's a wasting. My God.
Time's a kicking.
My God. One pizza and you guys slow down 40%. Boy, what slow guys. I'm calling the union hall today. God, it's going to take a whole day to build a wing here.
We got the cap strip king here.
Yeah, if you ever have a choice, use up the sea grain, Bobby, when you make up cap strips. If you have any, do we have any sea grain scrap here? Yeah, this is sea grain scrap. Use that up on the...
Oh, you don't want to use this?
No, I'd rather have sea grain if we have it. As long as you have it left over, you may as well use it. What the hell? Now, before we go any further too, Mike, we want to make the cap strips up. Put them on before we take the rod out. Then we could take the rod out and we'll probably have time. Put those little pieces in the back, box them in. And that's looking good, man. All this nonsense about being able to make a foam wing in one day, baloney. You can make a built-up wing in one day. As long as you have enough pizza. Yeah, you can use baking soda in place of sawdust or a Q-tip to kick CA, that's for sure. Okay, they're dropping right in, huh, Mike? No problem? You got this technique down, Pat?
Oh, to a science.
Oh, my God, I'm telling you.
You belong now.
And all this stuff, these guys that take all day to make a wing, it makes you crazy.
I'm going to quit the roofing and siding business.
That's right.
And I'm going to
kill it. all you have to do is just cut it a little bit on them. Here, you can trace the back, Mike, and then just reduce it by a 1/16. And then as you slide the rod out, drop the piece in one by one right down to the end of the ring. Might have to pull it out. Maybe it's going to run into the television there when we get to the point. And just make that a 1/16 less. Perfect. You need 22 of them.
Might miss.
And they don't have to be a real, nutsy fit. Well, that's good. They don't have to be a real super duper duper fit. They're just going to be the box, complete the box.
Oh, that's the back webbing?
Back webbing, yeah. You really can't glue them in with the rod there. In fact, you know what you do? Let's take the rod out. I got a better idea. See, I do this over and over. Let's take the rod out, take the ring off, and run glue down on all these seams. We haven't really. Let's glue that, and then press them in. But while we're gluing those in, I want to have this, laying flat on the table. Let's do that. I think that'll be a good choice. All right. You don't even have to twist this. It's such a good fit. Okay. You can snake it into the thing between the televisions.
I think it's going to... No.
You ready yet?
No.
Okay, wait 1 second. We're free on this side. Just wait 1 second. This one is off. Oh, wait 1 second, bud. Wait 1 second. Can you get it? Oh, yep. Now wait, I'll just pull the wing off. There you go. Okay, let's clear the table now. Get the table clear. Okay, you gonna box it in at home?
Yeah.
All right. It's almost time for Mike to pick up his daughter from school, so let's see. 4 hours, Mike? What do you figure?
2.5.
Nah, it was really about 4 hours and 5 minutes. That's a lot of time. Let's see, how's that coming? All right, hold it up so we can see how straight it is.
Can you see it from that way?
You bet your life. Let me see the trailing edge.
You don't get no straighter than that.
Oh, man.
Good heavens.
Oh, my God, eat your heart out.
Beautiful.
Okay, let's clean up. Party's over. I got a day's work to do. In today's mail, this picture came from Kevin King in Canada. Obviously some kind of a Spitfire museum. It's a museum. Looks like a really nice condition one too. Kevin, thanks for the picture. I'll be sending you some loaner tapes to check out, and we'll add this to our collection of Spitfire pictures. Never have enough of these, that's for sure. Thanks a lot. Now today, because we have let's just say another doctor visit, that's a better way to phrase it, right in the middle of the day, I really only have a few minutes to spend this morning, very short amount of time. What I wanted to do, this is one of the molds that I hope salvaged. I put PVA on it. This was basically a test, and when I cast it up with this material, and this was the rubber that we had just poured, it really didn't dry the way it should without the PVA on there, and the PVA I was using to try to give it a glossier surface. When I pulled this one apart, this one self-destructed. The rubber never cured anywhere near here. And what happened when I called back down to Wes, he made me read the ingredients off the can of black paint that I had, and one of the ingredients on the black paint was something that this rubber doesn't cure against. The platinum doesn't cure against styrene. So you really have to really be careful when you're making a mold. Everything that the rubber is going to touch has to be compatible. So I got out Ed Gallagher's book, and sure enough, I had screwed up again twice in a row. So I'm sure when I take these two molds apart, what's going to happen is I'm going to pull this apart off camera. They're not going to be dry in there because I'm running into a contamination problem. But what I did learn, I took these two that did come out okay, and I did several coats of sprayed on PVA. So when I pull these apart, again, I want to see if this is going to be a viable way of doing it. But again, I don't really have enough time to start working on the plane, so I'll just play with these little molds for a while, see if I can learn anything. I already know that I can make parts using the RTV, but what I'm trying to accomplish is to have a multi-cavity mold and find out, and all this information is going into when we actually get ready to start doing a composite fuselage. I'm really just playing a little experimental game here. I really don't even have to make these parts, but I'm learning an awful lot, and it's a pain in the neck all at the same time. The first thing I'm going to do is the one that I have here that I rebuilt. I want to get it sanded a little bit more. There's still a couple of rough spots on here. And then get another coat of auto primer on this so this can be drying while I pull these rubber molds apart. I learned from working on these before is you really don't ever want to use really rough sandpaper, because what happens, it puts deep scratches in, and then what happens when you fill them with primer, you don't get a nice soft blend from where the primer is to the metal. And of course these are made out of aluminum. This is the original one we made from aluminum tubing. Now we already have good parts cast from this. And while I'm out at the doctor's with Karen, I'm going to be going right past the molding supply place. Maybe I'll pick up some more resin and hardener today. But you really want to get this as smooth as possible before you do anything. Just one thing I thought I'd mention, what I found real helpful is to just roll sandpaper up into like little rolls. I don't know, little folds or whatever. Now the reason I say this is Bob Martens has mentioned to me many times that the biggest thing he's gotten off the videos, or one of the things that he's gotten that he really appreciates, is how you hold sandpaper to get the most effective use of it, the sanding blocks, the angles, how you hold it, all the little sanding wedges and stuff. And I have to tell you, when I started working in a machine shop, one of the things I learned right away is you have to be able to get sandpaper into corners and edges, and wet and dry paper when you're polishing dies. There's really a good amount of technology involved in just how to hold sandpaper. Maybe that's I don't know, a good subject for a Stunt News article or whatever. Anyway, this is almost ready. I want to get all the high spots off. Almost ready for another coat of auto primer. Now another thing I learned for sure is anytime you use, this is Krylon auto primer, it's got to dry for a day. You can't just a half hour later go make a rubber mold. It's always good to let it dry overnight, let it outgas, or whatever it is actually happens when you let that dry overnight, and it's especially good up by that heating vent. I want to mount this on a little bit bigger plate because I want the mold to actually be a little bigger. I think it's more flexible that way. I've been trying to make the molds a little bit too small just to save rubber, but now that we're kind of closing in on knowing what we want to do, we can make what I hope will be real, usable over and over molds. Try to get as reasonable a surface on here as I can. I'll mount the piece to it, and then auto primer the whole thing 3 or 4 more coats, get that real nice smooth finish on it. I always put the parts up to dry. You can see the heating vent is wide open. I turn the heat up in the house a little bit. This gives it a little bit of a kickoff. I might even be able to get 2 or 3 coats of auto primer on this today, but the one thing I don't want to do is put 3 coats on, one right after another, without having the one underneath it dry up. Usually 4 or 5 hours. Time I get back from the hospital, that'll be ready. Now, because these little molds, I had PVA on the rubber. Whoop! Jesus, look at this stuff. I'm trying to take these out with the aid of some really warm water. What I'm hoping that's going to do is kill some of the PVA so that these slide out. These are really a difficult little part, even for, I'm having explained this to other people of what I'm trying to do. They say this is really difficult. You have such small clearances in between the pipes, and I'm trying not to break the part. That's the... Oh, voila, we got our one. Now see, what happens is the heat from the hot water softens the epoxy. I can just push that back down into position now, just like you can bend a carbon prop. Actually, now I can take the PVA off of here. PVA is soluble in water. it looks like we've got a, hey, looks like we've hit pay dirt here. This may be the key to doing these. But again, there's obviously a see how nice and soft that is, look. But once I let the temperature cure, West Systems resin only goes to 156 degrees, and then it becomes jello. So by warming it up, I can kind of bend it, get these flutes to come apart. I would say this is a perfect piece. And the mold is certainly not in any way diminished. So what I'm going to try to do here, I'm not going to get too cute. What I'm going to do is cast up another one of these, because I've got several of these sold already, and I want to get some in the mail. I'll make up another one, put some PVA in the mold itself, and use this system to get them out. That's probably the most successful of the tests that we've had so far. And that's the whole thrill of doing this. It isn't fun just take a piece of balsa wood, carve it, but you know you're going to be able to do that forever. But when you can do something with new materials or a little bit of different technology, at least to me it's kind of exciting. See, now what the PVA gives you is a real, see how glossy and shiny the finish is? Now obviously you don't want that finish on there. What you want to be able to do now is with 600 paper rough that up so you can put the exhaust stains and whatever final finish color you want to have on there. But we now have the door open. I'm going to put some PVA back in this mold so this can be dry, and put it up by the heat vent, put this part in the envelope. By the way, 2 of these are going to Austria. Guy in Austria is building a Spitfire. Can you imagine? I got what I hope is going to be an opportunity to run a test. This, I made 2 of these up. This one, when I took the part out, it has a couple of molding flaws inside that I really don't want to use this particular one. At the end of the stacks, there's some rough spots. So what this will be a good test for me now, because I have a really similar cavity, I want to try to make up a little batch of the West Systems resin. And what I want to try is to run this mold with absolutely no PVA, just to see the difference. So I have one with PVA and one without. See the difference in the surfaces of both of them. And either way, by tomorrow I'll have 2 of those cavities made up. I'll have 2 more to take out of the mold here, and hopefully I've learned something in the process. Thing I thought I'd mention, and I don't have this in-house yet, but they do make a material to add to the epoxy, according to this Ed Gallagher book that I have, and I'm about 3/4 through reading it. They have an ingredient that you put in the epoxy. It's called an anti-aeration, anti-foam ingredient, and I'm going to order some of that probably when I get back today, and just see if that helps maybe what's happening is I'm still getting air bubbles in these molds because the walls are so thin. Another thing, as long as I get to run an experiment, it's always good to, if you can, do 2 experiments at once, since this is a free one. This is like having a free play in football or whatever the hell you want to call it. I'm going to put some Cabicil into this mix, and I want to try something that I read in that book that might work. It might be that some molds you need to paint on the first coat. So what I did, I split the epoxy in two little batches, put some Cabicil in the first batch. I'll stir that up real good, let it air out, and then paint that inside the mold, pretty much like some of the other cowling things we were doing, and that seemed to work pretty well. Now I don't know if it's going to work in this case, and actually the only way I'm going to know is if I do a test. And I hope you see that, I don't know, I guess there's, in the real world, I guess they run big companies this way. They just test stuff and see if it works. And it's time consuming. Now what the idea of putting the resin in with a brush, of course, is to break down all the air bubbles, or break most of them down. I don't know if this is really going to be productive. Seems to work good on the cowling layups though. But again, I'll have by next week I'll have that anti-foaming stuff. And I hope this company is going to be good with some technical advice too. They really have a lot of product. They really have a lot of high temperature tooling resins, and they have the resin that's good to 450 degrees, which is what I really want. Maybe to someday make some mufflers, exhaust systems. I mean, there's a lot of parts. If you could have the resin not temperature sensitive, you could really do a lot with that. They also have some aluminum filled resins that I'm sure you could make parts like exhausts out of, stacks. There's got to be a lot of stuff I can get from them, so it's just a question of hopefully making a good contact and hoping to work with me. And I really have to thank Ed Gallagher for that book. That has been, we'll see if this method works. You'll know by tonight, by tomorrow. Again, that thing of putting it by the hot water to demold it was working really well. I'm surprised how well. I'm surprised I didn't think of that before. I'm not even going to use any resin. All of the resin in this one has Cabosil, so I'll have that record for when I demold this. Now what I do, I let these dry. I don't want to put these up by the heating vent until they turn to gel a little bit, because I'm afraid that'll create more air bubbles. But I mark each one as I do it, so I have a little idea when I demold these in a day and a half. But I did get, in this one, you see the molding flaw in the back here? There's a little flaw in the back that I'm not crazy. Obviously you could fix this stuff, sand it and prime it and whatever, but I like to really work on my technique and my technology. I also, speaking of Steve DeJulia, he gave me a great idea for nose art. We were chit-chatting the other night. And somewhere in that nose art, I want to try to put the saying, never so few, or never have so few, or something. That's why I haven't run off to work on nose art this morning. I'm still trying to come up with some idea, and as of right now, we just have this, whatever it is, silhouette here to work with. But I'll come up with something, and I really can't paint while Karen's so sick anyway, so just going to have to roll with the punches here. Now, it looks like we have a usable double cavity mold here for the old style exhaust. I really don't, I'm not sure. I'm going to cast one up with the resin that's left over, and we can even give that a test today. The last thing I can do in this session, this is the triple cavity mold, and this came out better than I thought, and I don't know. I still have a little resin left. I'm going to give this a test. I may as well put all this stuff to dry, because basically this is going to be the end of this session. So we really did get a lot, as far as I can tell. This is a major step forward. Well, we got a triple cavity mold, a single and a double, and 2 pieces already out of the mold in one day. So I can anticipate that we can have as many as 6 pieces a day now coming out of the mold, once we get this molding thing, a final formula that we want to use. And the beautiful part is then if you ever decide you want to do this, you don't have to go through all these tests. Hey, once Columbus crosses the ocean, you just go over on the other. Okay, this has dried. This is 2 days it's dried, in fact. So the edges should break right down. Step 1, of course, I want to do the side that the muffler is on first, in case I have to do it over 6 or 7 times to make a final decision. Remember, I still haven't exactly decided what I want to do here. But Steve DeJulia's idea was definitely a good one. And I know he loves British warbirds. Man, I know that. I know a lot of people do. Hey, glad to see so many people have been complimenting me on this guy even. Okay, now the trick is I want to get the medium-sized pen. It's about a 55, I believe. I want to get this, I'll put new tape in here, and then I want to do, first thing is outline everything with a black outline. That sets, let's see, make sure it just sets right where I want it to. You know, and this kind of stuff, to me, this is even appropriate on Midgley's Cardinal or something. I know Walt Prey has he could do this by hand, but I need tools. And what it is with these kind of tools, you pretty much need a lot less talent than you need if you're going to do it freehand. Okay, those little dots of tape hold it in position. Let's get the pen set up. Now, this is a medium-sized pen. What I want to do is put a medium-sized line around everything. And the biggest mistake you can make here is to try to move the template before it dries, so I'll give that plenty of time to dry. And in this case, because we're going over very highly pigmented paint, it's going to take back and forth, back and forth. I'm actually almost grinding my way down into a line. Again, if you're really interested in some of this stuff, there's some really good ideas on that Strega lettering video. I think it's tape 19, I'm not sure. But this way, work with a very little amount of talent, and actually you could even borrow the Strega templates. What the heck? Why fool around? They're already made. Okay, so for step one, I'm going to just let that dry.
My pulpit beats madly without any cause. Believe me, I'm telling you truly.
Ink is all nice and dry now. I can start adding some details down to the face, maybe laying out the lettering, even though I'm running out of time here. I'm trying to get, maybe hoping I could get one side done before we had to leave, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the answer. And get this ink. Make sure it's dried before you go on to the next step. Other you get it like I just did, is get it on my hand and then you're touching everything. I've just been playing with the ink work here. Let's see how this comes out. Well, that's all we're going to get to do. See you later in the day. At least I can. Now, the last thing I did before leaving was just replace the lettering. I kind of like that and put the little quotation marks around it. Well, again, I have time this afternoon to think about this while I'm away, and then I can come back and ink the other side or add details or whatever. Okay, this is the harvest that came out of yesterday. Two of the pieces are real good, two are not so good. Two of them I had to throw away, and one was stuck in a mold and I threw the mold away. It just destroyed the mold. Now what I did learn is the ones with the PVA, a coat of PVA on this rubber. See, this is not silicone rubber. The silicone rubber doesn't need any release agent, but the PVA on these molds, it makes for a much nicer part, and until I get the other rubber, which may be another 2 weeks, I don't know. So now I have a couple of choices here. These, what I did is I took the triple mold and cut it. I believe I cut the double. I threw one of them away. I don't remember which one. It's irrelevant anyway. This is all testing stuff anyway. This is not to run production. And I have my original aluminum piece that I sanded back down, a couple more coats of primer, made a box with some PVA. What I'm going to do now, and this is again another test, I'll coat this afternoon with PVA also, just to see if I get that. What I'm looking for is that nice, see the nice shiny surface you get with the PVA? I'm looking to get a real nice surface, but basically then we'll come back here this afternoon after we get back from the hospital again, and we'll work on Mr. whatever he's turning out to be. Okay, I'm trying to clean up this side. Now what I'm going to basically try to do is just replicate the other side as close as possible, and then decide on what, if any, lettering. You notice how these things evolve. They have a life of their own at some point in time. Now a little bit of the overspray usually will come right off. We have had such a crazy, I guess, month here with Karen's illness, but we're closing in on having them ready, and I hope pretty soon we're going to see some clear dope on here and start getting the clear drying out, the cannons made, landing gear made, the buffing, the little manifolds. Now, of course, I got to reverse the tape and all the little things that lifted up off the surface. Now I have them on both sides. I can use this template either way. And of course, the whole idea with that is to make the nose kind of symmetrical from both sides. Now I notice this needs at least 2 coats, just for the simple reason that the paint underneath it is kind of on the over-pigmented side. But before we move that template, I want to make sure I have a good solid line around everything. I changed that lettering a couple of times on the other side to get it to where I was happy with it. Now with a real fine pen, getting all the corners in is probably one of the next reasonable steps.
scale for me. Take a breath and then reprise in a different key. All my life I shall remember knowing you, all the pleasure I have found in.
Now this is the part that's, I guess, kind of difficult, is I gotta kind of flip it over, get an idea what's on the other side, so they're kind of symmetrical. Yeah, I guess we could go from nostril up. But you're always kind of doing the flip here, that's the problem. You're always trying to figure out which side of this you should be on. This is where you really need a fine detailed pen, or George, or some artist friend that you can get to come over and do it for you. And then they'll probably protest the builder of the nose art rule or something, who knows. I gotta let that dry before I look at the other side and try to get it symmetrical. Getting it symmetrical is really a job. Difficult. And I gotta wait as each part dries. I gotta get it the right ink and do the tongue and touch up some of the edges and get the lettering in here and try to get them symmetrical. Now once the white ink dries, I can get that outlined in black. And then I just need to do, I think, just the nostrils here. Now, once that dries, we get some lettering in there. And Thompson's here, and he brought what amounts to be, what are these now, the proofs? Did you give these all to Model Aviation?
No, I sent them 12. These I just had.
These all look redundant here. Wait a minute, 1 second. Let's get one of each.
They're not all the same.
To show the intensity here. This one looks real nice.
Yeah, that's a
That's
really
a
like
real
that
nice one. You can see the dashboard and everything in the gun sight. Let's see, walk through. Let's see what else you have there.
This is a closer shot of
Okay, that's a closer one of this one.
Same thing. It shows the little jewels you have in the dashboard and so forth, and the gun sight and so forth. I like that
These
one.
are nice.
They're yeah, I got lots.
Let's see that one. That one. Oh, these are out of focus.
That's
okay.
out of focus. I'm going to have to shoot that cockpit thing again. I'm not real pleased with.
This is the one I like. You can really see Joe's plane here. Now, of course, I did all of them in a vertical mode.
Yep, trying to get a cover.
Let's back up a little bit so you can kind of see what the whole picture looks like here. Yeah, those look real nice so if you ever see, oh, that's a nice one. That's nice. Adamusco, eat your heart out. Wow, that would be my first choice.
There are a bunch of nice pictures here.
Beautiful. This one shows real well.
This one is one I really like a lot.
That's nice with the 5-bladed prop.
Right.
Yeah. The rocks don't look bad. I thought the rock, well, the Model Aviation or whatever will go over that. Wow. This one's washed.
Yeah, that metallic paint is tricky. These are just machine prints.
Even though this is a single plane, this is nice.
Yeah, they might go with that. They seem to like really simple covers.
Real simple covers, yeah.
That's very pretty.
Yeah, this one's nice too. Yeah. Oh, that is nice.
Well, someone's gonna like that. That wasn't. I don't like the distortion.
I can picture Model Aviation or something up here or whatever.
Who knows? Who knows what someone else is gonna choose?
Great tripod.
There's another one that shows the prop.
Yeah, that's nice with the prop. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
This is another a nice one. Nice elliptical shapes.
Yeah.
In there.
Cool.
And these are the ones I actually selected to.
These are like they made the finals into the Sport Illustrated.
They made my finals. Okay. I was going to send them.
They don't seem to go for complicated. I've noticed when we look back there, there's always one plane and a very simple background. I like that one
Yeah.
too.
Well, the focus is tricky on this. I could either have the
Yeah, you can have
cockpit
one
in
or the
focus
other.
or the plane in focus, so
that's
I
nice.
compromised. Everything's always, I really like that one. That's my favorite.
That is nice, yeah.
And this is my second favorite.
This one, for some reason, I think is the nice. That really is a simple. It catches your attention. The stripes always jump right out at you.
Gonna tell Joe never to use metallic paint again.
Yeah, well, that's fancy paint. He worked on that paint a long time. Had it custom mixed and everything.
Well, that's what happens when you turn into a professional.
Yeah, well, he's a perfectionist.
And these two are, this is,
That's nice. That's a nice one.
yeah, and this is the one where you pointed out you weren't crazy about seeing the mufflers and stuff, but it's still a
Yeah,
nice
it doesn't matter
It's
what
a
the
nice
hell's the
picture.
difference. Actually, it's a good
And there's a-
advertisement for tongue mufflers.
variation of that one. So that's what I sent. I sent them 12 or 13.
All right, so if you see that on Model Aviation, if not, hey, you'll know when Paul had something. I did a couple of things late last night. Got the rest of the lettering in there. Tried to match the sides. Did the rest of the, what amounts to be the Zeus fittings, I guess we'd call them. Tried to get the sides the same. Ken Thompson was here showing me the pictures, and sure enough, I spelt indefatigable wrong. Anyway, we did make the correction. And we got a little bit more work to do on this, so we're going to be getting ready to put the clear on. Maybe in the next session, finish this up today. Okay, this was yesterday's mold production. I had made up 2 more molds from the urethane rubber, loaded up whatever I could salvage out of the old ones. I'll do this off camera. This is just getting redundant because I'm trying to close. I should have my good rubber, the silicone rubber, next week, but this will give me a good little database to work with. Now here's today's lesson, and this is a significant lesson, with 2 coats of PVA and urethane rubber, and this is the real cheap rubber. Remember, this is not the platinum cured rubber yet. Even with this real cheap rubber, which is about a third the price, this is really cheap stuff. You're able to make reasonable replications. The only part of this that I had missed is, if you want that nice shiny surface, to use the PVA. I'm going to rip these apart and see if any of these are useful. Yeah, we're learning, very slowly but surely. I also got in today's mail, I got this from Miller Stevenson. They send us the real high-end epoxy for the props. Spoke to them and they said, give this a try on the rubber molds. Don't know if this is going to be the answer, but being I have extra molds now, and see, that's the advantage of having all that extra stuff, is now I can run a test on a little tiny mold. I'll mark how it works out, and tomorrow I'll know if this is going to be an alternative to the PVA. I also got this, and I'm not going to try this on this particular part, but what I'm going to do is wait until I do Midgley's cowl. That'll be a nice big part, because this has to be ragged on and ragged off. But we have 3 of them. We have 3 different sealers now to try. And by having all this stuff, again, the database just keeps getting better and better and better and better. Now, it's just funny. I was looking through the box. I even have one more of these that Ed Gallagher sent a while back. And the reason I'm looking back on all this stuff, this is stuff I've never even had put to a real test. The reason I'm looking at this stuff now is I spoke to Bob Martens last night also. And Bob is now working he's working for an aircraft company, I don't remember which one, but he's working right next door to the wet layup department, so he's been able to get me some proprietary information on the way they lay up carbon, and mainly how they put a vacuum on the... Now, I've been trying to put the final details, just adding a few ink lines here and there, a few letter-sets. I want to put a little more detail up by the canopy yet. I'm looking around for areas that look like they need a little more detail to make them stand out. Again, most of this is really just time consuming. It just, that old labor of love, that old Italian thing that the Italians used to say, it was as if time didn't exist. They did things as if time did not exist. I love that saying.
Life don't seem the same.
Actually, the truth is, the Pope commissioned me. Look at this, I messed up 3 of these with my finger. Okay, good time to show. Once you do mess a few up, just go by with the razor blade.
And after all said and done,
or the other tip, Pomatic. In this case, I don't want to take a chance on scratching the paint. See, so even if you're clumsy, you can do good ink work. It seems like the white ink comes right off, the black doesn't. So you want to be really more careful when you're doing the black, I mean. And when Ken was here yesterday, he was watching me fix a lot of mistakes. And he says, "Oh, you're not any better than I am. You just fix mistakes better." Well, maybe that's true. You can see how much more dramatic it looks and more scale with the rivets. Same thing I did out on the blisters. I added the layer of rivets.
Light and darkness through all time to be.
I'm ready to start this part of the job. This is the black dot that goes inside the white dot to make it really look like a rivet, and I'm going to do just the ones around the cockpit and canopy so they'll coordinate and match with what's inside. These are a lot smaller, these are a lot bigger. Again, this is just part of what I have to, like an evolutionary process here, figure out exactly how many and how I want to do them.
Too weak to break the chain.
I'm just trying to scan, looking around for places that need a little extra. I really just putting in what I hope is going to be final details here. And then get ready, the big mix of the clear, and get ready to start shooting clear first over all little inclines and details, and then of course the rest of the clear. I'm already dreaming about it. The trouble with all this stuff is once you start, you just never stop dreaming. They make up the cannons. See how little nose art guy came out. I found some, I guess, British looking, I don't know what these are, Roman letters, Gothic, whatever they are. And it just kind of adds a little bit to the old, I don't know what we're going to call him, lion head, dog head, mule head, whatever he is. What I have in here is all of the clear that I'm going to use on this job. This is just a little bit less than a gallon of material, and it's a little bit on the thick side. Now what I'm going to do, I have 3 jaws here. I'm going to break it down into 3 equal parts. 1/3 of this is going to go over the ink lines, edges. We've already done this on tape. Now of course it's not like we're trying to get this down to where it's 1/10 of an ounce or something, but I really do like to have roughly 1/3 of that material go over the electrosets, over the edges. And what I'm going to do is put all this material back into one can. I don't want any more than a gallon of material to start with. 2 quarts of light coat, 2 quarts of thinner. Then I can add all the thinner I want. Now all of the paint that's going to go over the electrosets, the lines and the edges, we want to have just a little bit thicker than normal. Of course what I'm going to try to do is get it all on with this gun. This is the dedicated clear gun. Nothing ever goes in here except clear. Famous last words. Feels kind of stuck up, so I want to I want to start with actually the material I'm going to use. I don't want to use any of this old stuff. And I'll spray some thinner through the gun, make sure it's all nice and clean, because no colored paint ever goes in here. You hope that you're not going to be spraying this and a big blob of red comes out or something. Plus, a good thing to do is, just common sense would be, I'm looking around for my knife, would be to try to get a test piece that you don't care if you have a little bit extra paint on. In this case, the tip weight box cover really doesn't matter, but this is always a good test. The little blocks, and then we'll start on the little pieces. Okay, that piece looks like the paint's a little on the dry side, so first thing I want to do is add a little bit of thinner to that mix of paint. Now look at that, it's telling me still it's a little bit on the dry side, so I'm going to sneak up on this. I'm adding about 2 ounces of thinner at a time to that. It's a 32 ounce mix. Just that's a little bit still on the dry side. I can also back down the pressure just a little bit to kill some of that. It's just not going on nice and smooth. That's why it's always good to test all these little pieces first. Is by getting all these little tests done. The worst thing you can do at this point in time is have the paint too thin. It'll melt the electrosets, the ink will run. So I want to sneak up on having it at the right mix. I want to be on the thick side if possible. By the way, it is cold out there. It's just about at the point where I would have to paint inside if it gets any colder. Okay, now we're 2 ounces into that mixture, and look at the difference in the way the paint's laying out. Tremendous. So this is why I guess this is the only way I really know how to do this is to sneak up on it. If this was on the too thin side, as soon as I'd put it on those electrosets, everything will melt. Anyway, that looks like it's real close, and that's good. A good tip you can use right away. Go from the thick side, add about 2 ounces of thinner to what I have, a quart, 32 ounces, until you just get this nice flow out pattern. And you know you're right on the razor edge here. Listen to these crows mating up in the tree. Wild, anyway. It is cold out here. Shut up, you bastards. These crows are really having a great time here. So I'm trying to get the light to reflect so you can see. I try to do this by candling. Again, the first coat, you don't want to get it so wet, you melt everything. A nice dry coat that flows out nice. Takes a little fooling to get everything just right, but it's worth it. Like everything in the world of sun, it's worth it. Oh, that color comes up nice. See, a lot of times when you paint a clear on a color, it changes the color significantly. In this case, let me see. Now I want to see the camo color in the sun. Oh yeah. It's cold out here though. Well, we're almost at the end of this tape. And I don't know if I'm going to get that main frame painted. It is getting colder, but I don't know why. I thought this was going to get to be a warm day. Kind of get stuck. But even if I just get these painted, I feel like I'll have accomplished something today. And one of the tricks I always recommend is when you put the first coat on, no matter how tempting it is, don't go and put the second and third and fourth coat on Because that first coat has to seal out all the ink lines, all electrosets. When you put the next coat on, sometimes you just wet it down enough and everything melts, and boy is that frustrating. I also need to take some time and mask off that canopy, make some kind of final little mask for that canopy. I don't want to get paint inside if I can help it. And what I usually do, I'm sure I put on it, is hold that when I do the end right with my thumb, get the last little bit painted, get the edges painted. Now once we have this coat of clear on here, the next thing is going to be to go over all electrosets 8, 10, 15 times, I don't know, as many as I can, and use up 1/3 of that material. The reason I want to get one coat on here is it's getting very delicate, and there's a lot of people in the shop handling it every day. Most of them are pretty clumsy and greasy, including me. Anyway, hope to see you on the next tape, one way or another. Well, at least the crows have gone off to their mating habitat or wherever they're going. What it is, when you come outside 2 minutes, it doesn't seem cold. When you're out here for 15 minutes, I guess I could wear a coat. Difficult to spray with a coat restricting you, though, that's for sure.
I forget when night is through. Take a breath and then reprise in a different key. All my life I shall remember knowing you. Oh, the pleasure I have found in showing you the different ways that one may pray. The changing light and changing shade, happiness that must die, melodies that must fly, memories that must fade, dusty and forgotten by and by.
Darling, can't you never need to sleep again? Here all the destinies are